Hello guys and welcome back to my channel and welcome to all the newcomers. Good to have you. This is the first video of the year. Actually, this video was supposed to come out last year but I ended up getting kind of delayed, and so here it is. But yeah, last year I made a list of my top games that I played in 2020. So I thought, hey, you know what, why not keep this thing going, and I decided to make that type of video for this year. So, or for last year, yeah, I'm gonna be talking about the top games I played last year. We're gonna do the top 15 games. So without further ado, let's go. So, starting us off with number 15 is Yakuza Kiwami 2. In last year's video, I talked about Yakuza Zero, and so, as the crazed Yakuza fan I now am, I'm literally obligated to talk about Yakuza Kiwami. In fact, I'm obligated to talk about a Yakuza in one of these videos every time I play one, so like literally just expect one almost every year. So I should note that Yakuza Kiwami 2 is chronologically the third game in the series, because there's Yakuza 0, which is the prequel, and then we have Yakuza Kiwami, and then we have Yakuza Kiwami 2. So that makes this the third game. So the synopsis for this game is this. A year after leaving his former life in the Tojo clan behind, ex-Yakuza Kazuma Kiryu is called back into action when the clan's fifth chairman, Yukio Terada, is murdered by assassins from a rival organization, the Yomi Alliance. Returning to Kamurocho, Kiryu must now find a new chairman for the Tojo clan and prevent an all-out war between the Tojo and the Yomi, bringing him into conflict with Ryuji Goda, the legendary Dragon of Kansai of the Yomi Alliance. So, right off the bat, one of my favorite things about this game was the new dragon engine that the game is using. My goodness, the game looks great. Because of the dragon engine, you could have random encounters that you could have with random thugs, like literally anywhere. And I mean like anywhere. Like you could walk into a grocery store like mid-fight and like the enemies would follow you in, and then you would like start fighting from there. And after the fight is done, of course the shopkeeper would be like so mad, and then you can't buy from that store for a while, because especially if you damage the area, the shopkeeper will be super pissed and they won't sell you anything. Which I found really funny. That said though, I do have some criticisms for the game. So unfortunately for me, the story for this game is weaker than its predecessors. Too many people and too many groups were being introduced for my tiny gamer brain to handle. To make matters worse, some of these parties that were introduced seemed to be discarded shortly after being introduced. But otherwise, the game still retained its over-the-top goofiness that all Yakuza games have. I mean, it's a Yakuza game. So I would still recommend this to anybody that wants to pick it up. But of course, I am an advocate for playing games in order, so please play the prequel, play Yakuza Kiwami, and then play this. I'm begging you. Or at least just start with Yakuza Kiwami. At number 14, we have Watch Dogs. Yeah, I know I'm late to the Watch Dogs party, but at least I got here, so please don't add me, guys. Set within a fictionalized version of the Chicagoland area in 2013, the single-player story follows grey hat hacker and vigilante Aiden Pierce's quest for revenge after the killing of his niece. So, I haven't even finished Watch Dogs yet. I'm pretty sure I'm like 70% into the story, and I really like it. Like, I really enjoyed playing it. So for Watch Dogs, like most open world games, our protagonist has a skill tree, and you can upgrade the protagonist to suit your playstyle. I, for one, focus more on his hacking abilities rather than his fighting abilities, because my playstyle mostly was stealthy and long distance. You know, like I would rather like hide behind the bushes and just like hack some guy's explosives. But like if you want, Aiden also has skills that you can upgrade. If you want to be more of a, yeah, I'm a hacker but I can still throw hands kind of hacker, you know what I mean? Like he has those kinds of skills that you can upgrade to help him fight better. I think if you're looking for an open world game where the MC is a hacker and you kind of like want a game that will give you a lot to do, I guess Watch Dogs is always a safe bet. The first Watch Dogs, I haven't played the second one yet, but yeah, this one I've had enough fun with it. It's pretty good and I would recommend this to anyone that might be on the fence about this game. Okay, I know we were just talking about Yakuza Kiwami, but here's another Yakuza Kiwami game. And this time it's gonna be Yakuza Kiwami 1. Believe it or not, I actually preferred Yakuza Kiwami 1 to Yakuza Kiwami 2. Like the original PlayStation game, Yakuza Kiwami explores the life of a man named Kazuma Kiryu, who is demoted from his clan after taking the blame for his boss's murder. After a decade in prison, Kiryu searches for his old friends who have gone missing. So this story takes place after what happens in Yakuza Zero. Kiwami's storytelling is not as stellar as the prequel, and I'm not sure if that's because this is essentially a remake of Yakuza 1, which came out in 2005. But that said, it's a Yakuza game still, and there's lots of fun to be had here, and I enjoyed it, you know. So this game features a hilarious system that I absolutely loved called the Majima Everywhere series. For those of you that don't know, Majima is like Kiryu's longtime rival. So in this story, like Kiryu goes to jail for like a really long time at the beginning of the story. So when you get back, Majima claims that Kiryu's abilities have dulled. So Majima says that their rivalry will be kind of boring if Kiryu is weak. So he decides to take it upon himself to help Kiryu get stronger by offering to fight Kiryu until he returns to his former glory. So this now means that Majima can pop up from literally anywhere at any time to fight you. And I found that absolutely hilarious. But this system is kind of annoying if you're trying to do like story quests and you know you really want to, like, you're in a hurry and then you end up encountering Majima like a few times on the way, and that gets kind of annoying. But it's a good game. Please try it out. Please. And at number 12, we have Persona 5 Strikers. But like some of you are probably wondering, like, hey, aren't you like, you're always talking about how much you love Persona, but like why is this game so low on your list? I'll get to that. Let's get to the synopsis for this game first. So Persona 5 Strikers is a sequel to the original Persona 5 game. The Phantom Thieves find themselves traveling around Japan investigating cases in which usually people in positions of power suddenly begin behaving differently. The gang uses the metaverse in order to enter the hearts of these people and find out what's causing all these problems. First of all, sorry for the horrible synopsis. Like, explaining Persona 5 Strikers without explaining the entirety of Persona 5 is a bit difficult, but Strikers' main difference from the original game is now that it's a Warriors game or a Musou game. And last year's video I explained what a Musou game is, and these types of games are essentially games where you find yourself squaring up against like tons of enemies at once, with a few boss enemies thrown into the mix at different intervals. Again, some people were put off the game because it was made in this style, but like for me, I was only too happy to experience Persona 5 in yet another way. And this game delivers a great story, but for me, who had been on a Persona 5 binge, I was a little bit burnt out playing this. I had played Persona 5, and then shortly after, I hopped onto Persona 5 Royal, and no sooner had I shed my tears as the ending credits played, Persona 5 Strikers was out. And, well, Persona 5 Strikers is still a Persona 5 game at its core, but maybe it just didn't hit as hard for me because I felt like I had already played it. But Burnout aside, though, this game still had everything I enjoy in Persona 5. The characters that I had come to know and love, the fun and engaging combat, and oh my gosh. Do not even start about the banger soundtrack. Anyone who's played it already knows what I'm talking about. Persona 5 music never disappoints. Striker's music did not disappoint. I still listen to a lot of the music on loop now. But otherwise, Persona 5 Strikers is a great game, but I would still advise anyone that wants to play it to go ahead and play it. Just make sure that you have at least like basic Persona 5 knowledge before you end up hopping into this, because there will be a lot of references of, oh, remember what happened in Persona 5? Yeah, me too, and you'll be lost. And at number 11, we have The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword HD. The 16th mainline entry in the Legend of Zelda series, Skyward Sword is the first game in the Zelda timeline detailing the origins of the Master Sword, a recurring weapon within the series. Link, resident of a floating town called Skyloft, heads on a quest to rescue his childhood friend Zelda after she's kidnapped and brought to the surface, an abandoned land now below the clouds. So Skyward Sword is a really good game to start with if you're looking to hop into Zelda, because like the synopsis said, it's essentially like the first why am I doing this? Okay. The first game in the timelines. The game was first released for Nintendo Wii back in 2009, and the game was only playable via motion controls, where the Wii remote being held in the right hand was used to control the sword in Link's right hand, and the nunchuck in the left hand was used to control the shield in his other hand. Now, with this port onto the Nintendo Switch, the game allows you to pick between either button controls or motion controls. Users of the Nintendo Switch Lite, unfortunately, are limited to using button controls only, unless you have like a bunch of spare Joy-Cons just like laying about. And if you do, like if you have a Nintendo Switch Lite and you have a bunch of spare Joy-Cons, I have some words to say to you. As someone who greatly enjoyed Breath of the Wild and its Warriors spin-off, Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, I was looking for my next Zelda fix that wasn't being played on an emulator. Nintendo police, please don't come for me. I was overjoyed when this game was actually ported, because it's one of the ones I hadn't played yet. I absolutely loved being able to see Link and Zelda's relationship like up front. We got to see them fooling around and just being good friends to one another, which I found super cute. The game also featured some really nice and lengthy dungeons that actually required me to use my brain when I was doing them. All in all, if you like Zelda and if you want to get into a Zelda that's more of the traditional Zelda than Breath of the Wild, I think Skyward Sword is always a safe bet. Ignore the fact that I changed clothes and probably the setup looks like a little different than it did before. My camera died mid-shoot and I am literally recording this a week later. So at number 10 for me, I had The World Ends With You. Now this was a game that I really didn't expect to be on this list. Set in the modern day Shibuya shopping district of Tokyo, this game features an anime art style and urban fantasy elements inspired by Shibuya and its youth culture. In the story, the protagonist Neku Sakuraba and his allies are forced to participate in an event called the Reaper's Game, a week-long competition that would determine their fate. This game originally released on the Nintendo DS, and why am I telling you this? You'll see. You guys know what the DS was like. It was essentially two screens and the bottom one was touchscreen. So, you know, most of the games revolved around the whole touchscreen mechanic. And The World Ends With You was one of these games. On the DS, this game handled by tapping and swiping. And that was done to move in battle and even just in the overworld. Which was understanding because, like I said, the DS was made for that, for tapping and swiping. But on the Switch, the game had two modes of control. The traditional tap and swipe, where your console was in handheld mode, and when docked, you could use a single Joy-Con to point at the screen and use it like a remote control to control your character. I originally started playing on the TV because, of course, I love playing my Switch in dock mode and I wanted to see the game on the big screen. But then, after the first hour or so, I started to feel like it was freaking arm day at the gym. It was physically painful to play the game for more than an hour, and even after an hour, my hand would still be sore because it was like I was working out. So after that, I resorted to using the tap and drag in the handheld mode to sort of emulate the way it was played on the DS. But because my hands were apparently too meaty, I kept on messing up my moves because my taps and swipes weren't accurate enough, which led me to break out a random third-party stylus that I had randomly. So I used this stylus to continue playing the game. And that solved my problem a little bit. It was a bit easier to play that way. But after that, the problems don't end here. After that, I found that I couldn't hold my Switch in a non-awkward way because it's much too big to hold in my hands like a DS. So eventually, I ended up settling to just playing my Switch on whatever surface I was sitting on at the time. But garbage controls aside, the story that this game is trying to tell us is really good. I found the protagonist to be unnecessarily emo in the first half of the game, but of course, like, as the story went on, you know, he had his character development and blah blah blah, and he starts getting a little better, and I could stand him a bit more after that. Without giving too much of the story away, the plot twists in this game were crazy. As someone whose music taste mostly composes of video game music, the music in this game was top tier. And it never stopped wowing me, and I'm happy to say that most of the music from this game has found itself in my regular music rotations. I recommend this to Persona and Kingdom Hearts fans, especially. You guys will definitely enjoy this game, like, no doubts about it. Also, if you don't have a Switch but you want to try this out, this game is also on mobile, and it's essentially the exact same one that's on Switch, so have a crack at it. It's pretty fun. I had never been interested in a Monster Hunter game before, but when I saw the trailers for Monster Hunter Rise, I could literally already calculate the amount of weight I was going to lose because of how much lunch I was going to miss saving up for this game. Monster Hunter Rise is an action RPG that will transport players to the colorful Kamura village, an all-new serene mountain locale that attracts visitors with its unique culture and innovative hunting technologies. So, you know, Monster Hunter games usually have the same kind of premise, like your character is a monster hunter, so you go out hunting these larger-than-life monsters, and when you kill them, you can use the materials to make yourself new drip. Okay, but really, the main draws of these games are the monsters, really, the big monsters and stuff. And I had never been too keen on the other games, but there's just something about the Japanese aesthetic that Rise has that was definitely more than enough to rope me in. I mean, of course, I'm a whole weeb, so this was very anime, so I was like, you know what, maybe I'm kind of interested in this. When I first started the game, I didn't really see any point to it. Where was the fun in just going out and hunting these huge monsters? But once you go for your first actual hunt, no tutorial, you get to experience the thrill of just setting out to hunt a monster that easily rivals any mansion in size and definitely outmatches you in strength. Rise is also one of the best looking games on the Switch in my opinion. I'm not too sure if it's because it was optimized for Nintendo Switch, but it looks pretty great. Rise is definitely one of those must-have games on the Switch, especially if you're a huge weeb and you like action games. Moving on to number 8, we have Xenoblade Chronicles, the Definitive Edition. Xenoblade Chronicles takes place on the frozen bodies of two warring titans, the Bionis and the Mechonis. The people of Bionis, including the human-like Homs, are in a perpetual war with the Mechon, machine race of Mechonis. Key to the Homs' effort in fighting against the Mechon army is a Monado, a sword that is said to have been wielded by the Bionis. During an attack on his colony, the main protagonist, Shulk, discovers his ability to wield the Monado, and sets out on a quest for revenge with his best friend Ryan, while others joining in as the game progresses. The combat does take some getting used to though. In this game, positioning is the name of the game. Certain skills only work best depending on whether you're in front of, behind, or beside an enemy. You have to make sure you're positioned correctly according to whatever skill you want to use, and for me that took a bit of getting used to. I would also like to say that the environments in this game are absolutely gorgeous. The game looks fine on its own in handheld, but I kind of found it better when it was docked. It looked better to me when it was docked and I was playing it on TV. I'll see if I can properly review this game in the future when I've played a little bit more of it, but I highly doubt that my opinion will change. It's a good game, I'm enjoying the game, and I recommend it to anyone that likes JRPGs. So some of you may know that in 2020 I was able to play Final Fantasy VII Remake, and of course that left me more hungry for Final Fantasy stuff. So I was eventually able to download Final Fantasy 15 from a friend. Final Fantasy 15 takes place in the fictional world of Eos. Aside from Insomnia, the capital of Lucis, all the world is dominated by the Empire of Niflheim Crystal. Noctis Lucis Caelum, heir to the Lucian throne, goes on a quest to rescue the crystal and defeat Niflheim. He later learns his full role as the true king, destined to use the crystal's powers to save Eos from eternal darkness. After coming from Final Fantasy VII, which is limited to like a few areas, playing 15 was definitely a shock when I realized that the game was fully open world. I mean, we're not being restricted by story. I could just hop into the car with the bros and head wherever I wanted to go on the map. Oh, and let me take this opportunity to talk about the combat. So, like most modern FF games, the combat is real-time, meaning that it's not turn-based. Noctis can use a wide array of different weapon types, and as long as you have them equipped, you can literally switch between them on the fly, which is very handy during combat. Oh, I should also mention that early in-game, you get introduced to what are known as the Royal Arms, and basically these weapons are extremely powerful weapons that were used by past kings. The first one you get is like compulsory to, of course, like it's a compulsory quest and you end up picking up one of them. But the rest of them are optional to collect. But trust me, you want to collect these things because they are super OP. Once you use the first one they gave you, you would definitely be compelled to look for the rest. There's only 13, but you have to complete some kind of dungeon to get them. The dungeons are usually a bit challenging, but I mean it's worth it to get them because they do make you strong. Oh, and using the Royal Arms takes away your HP. So one of my favorite things about Final Fantasy 15 is just seeing Noctis and his bros experience stuff together as they continue on their journey. The interactions between them are always pretty interesting to watch, and they're usually really cute. Honestly, I could go on all day about Final Fantasy 15. But you know what, I think I'll stop here and I will tell you guys to go play it because it's a great game. If you ever get the chance to play it, please play it. So this next game might sound a little weird, but hear me out first, okay? Our indecisive protagonist Vincent has been with his longtime girlfriend Catherine for 5 years, but instead of taking the next step into marriage, Vincent finds himself in an affair with the provocative blonde bombshell Catherine. Thrown into a discord by his own infidelity, he finds solace in the innocent Rin, further complicating matters. Adding to Vincent's dilemma, he begins having nightmares that force him to climb for his life. Will he survive the trials and tribulations of love or fall to temptations? So, in-game, there's a certain curse that only applies to cheating men. Said curse causes cheating or indecisive men. They'll have nightmares where they're climbing towers, and if they die in the dream, they die in real life. So our protagonist already has a girlfriend called Catherine, spelled with a K, but then he ends up cheating on her with another girl called Catherine, spelled with a C. And then he eventually starts messing around with someone else called Rin. Let me tell you this though. Our protagonist is an absolute mess. But the story is super engaging. I mean, the game has 3 main routes corresponding to each of the game's love interests. And the game has 2 modes, the day/night time, where our protagonist usually just talks to his colleagues and can do a few other things. And then we have the nightmare mode, which is like the main draw where the whole game happens, where Vincent falls asleep and you're transported to the nightmare world where you have to climb the towers consisting of multiple cubes and avoid sudden death. I'm not usually one that loves puzzle games, but there's just something about how Catherine is presented that makes me want to soldier on. I guess maybe the story is really intriguing to me. I usually don't dabble in puzzle games. The game is really one best experience by oneself, so I don't want to go into detail and end up spoiling it for you, because it's one of those games where if you're going blind, it'll be way better for you. So Bayonetta is a game I had been wanting to try ever since I started maining her in Smash. So last year I was finally able to play Bayonetta, and I'm here to report that it's a good game. Bayonetta takes place in Vigrid, a fictional city in Europe. The game stars the eponymous character, a witch who's capable of shapeshifting and using various firearms. She possesses magical attacks and she can use her hair to summon demons to dispatch her foes. The combat system in this game is absolutely insane, by the way. I feel like Devil May Cry fans will probably enjoy this a lot. I was playing on the normal difficulty and the beginning of the game felt relatively easy. Then as I went on, I quickly discovered that I should definitely leave the difficulty as is because the bosses were now kicking my butt. But nothing feels more satisfying than being able to kick that boss's butt that's been killing you for the past 10 turns. There's a lot of fun to be had in Bayonetta and I recommend it. I want everyone to play Bayonetta right now. Moving on to number 4, we have Celeste. I've kind of been itching to rant about this game, or not really rant, more like to talk about it somewhere. And I never thought I would see the day when a platformer made it onto my top 5 of one of these lists. So in this game, our protagonist Madeline undertakes the challenge of climbing a mountain with dangerous perils and mysterious powers. Throughout her journey, she's confronted by part of her bad side doppelganger, given a body by the power of the mountain, who is everything she needed to leave behind. So Celeste is one of those games that kind of really resonated with me, and it was hard for me to even put it down once I started playing it. I usually avoid platformers, but Celeste made me want to push on and kind of finish it. So our protagonist Madeline decides to climb this huge mountain, Celeste Mountain, sort of to prove a point to herself that she can change and become a better person if she sets her mind to it, because she doesn't really like the person she is at present. Celeste Mountain is said to be magical, and our MC doesn't believe it at first, and until she eventually meets a sort of evil version of herself in the mountain that keeps telling her negative things like, oh, you never make it, or you should just go home, you'll be more comfortable there. And you find yourself constantly fighting against this pessimistic version of herself. The game isn't an easy platformer by any means. I think I died over 1,000 times throughout the whole game. The game does count your deaths. I'm trying to keep this mini review as spoiler free as possible. It's essentially a game about our protagonist suffering with her own mental health and kind of trying to get by and improve herself. The story is really good. I don't want to get into it. I don't want to spoil it. And I think you guys should just go ahead and try it for yourselves. Alright, so we are finally in our top 3. And to start us off, at number 3, we have Hades. Players control Zagreus, the son of Hades, as he attempts to escape from the underworld to reach Mount Olympus, at times aided by gifts bestowed on him from other Olympians. While Zagreus will often die, the player can use gained treasure to improve certain attributes or unlock new weapons and abilities to improve chances of escaping on subsequent runs. Before this game, I kind of assumed that I hated all roguelikes. This game is a roguelike, The combat is extremely fast, and it's one of those things where if you blink for too long, the enemies will wreck Zagreus without a second thought. While in combat, you have to make sure you're dodging enemy attacks while also dodging stage hazards that may be present. Combat aside though, one of my favorite things is literally just watching the interactions between Zagreus and everybody from the House of Hades, and also his Olympian family members, which was kind of nice. The story and the gameplay complement each other perfectly, which makes Hades such an addictive experience. Every time I died during a run and found out some new information in the underworld, that would usually unlock some new dialogue back home in the House of Hades, and that would motivate me to go back into the underworld again. Even if you think you might not like this, please give Hades a chance, and I don't think you will regret it at all. Great game. Now we move on to number 2. I've been itching to talk about this game. Guys, number 2 is Katana Zero. Katana Zero takes place in the dystopic neo-noir city of New Mecca. In this city, a mass-murdering katana-wielding bathrobe-clad assassin named Subject Zero takes kill contracts from his psychiatrist. Zero possesses the ability to manipulate time. He's able to use his precognition to predict the outcomes of events, rewind time whenever his plans would lead him to certain death, and slow his perception of time. Katana Zero is one of those games whereby immediately I picked it up, I was like, this game was literally made for me. So our protagonist is an assassin of sorts, and the game mostly comprises you getting contracts and hitting up buildings to kill a bunch of people. Our MC, Zero, has the ability to slow down time at will, which is really helpful during the fights. You can use this ability to slow down time when being shot at to give yourself enough time to deflect the bullets, which always feels incredibly satisfying. Our protagonist also has the ability to kill each enemy in one hit, which is even more satisfying. But of course, there has to be a catch for him being that strong, right? You die in one hit as well. But like, lucky for us, the game runs this checkpoint system, so when you die, you'll be swiftly returned to your last checkpoint to try again. So the story of Katana Zero is really short. Well, it's not really short, but it's short enough and it's super interesting. Not only that, the gameplay is really smooth. The soundtrack is stellar. 50 out of 10 for this soundtrack because, oh my goodness, the awesome synthwave music that accompanies this game is beautiful. Again, I don't want to spoil the story, but I want more people to play this game because I think it's severely underrated. I don't see enough people, or in my circles anyway, talking about Katana Zero. And we might be getting DLC for this game this year, so hey, it's best to hop onto this game, right now. Okay, we've run through 14 of these guys, and we are almost to number 1. Thank you for watching this far in the video, I really appreciate it. Before we get to number 1, I just kind of want to do a few honorable mentions. I think I have about 5. I enjoyed playing these games last year, but I didn't really know where to put them in the list. Okay, so the number 1 game on my list is, drumroll please, Ghost of Tsushima. So the game is inspired by true events in Japanese history. It's set in the late 13th century on Tsushima Island during the first Mongol invasion of Japan. Players control Jin Sakai, one of the island's last samurai, as he learns the way of the ghost, a unique combat style in an effort to drive back the invaders. The story of Ghost of Tsushima instantly had me hooked. Not only the main story, mind you, because even the side quests in this game are super exciting. This game has officially joined the ranks of games where I actively went looking for side quests because they are just as interesting as the main story. Another one of the things I loved about this game was just the beautiful island of Tsushima. The game environment is really, really nice. I had to stop myself from taking screenshots every 2 seconds. Ghost of Tsushima is a beautiful game that I would recommend to hardcore gamers and casual gamers alike because I think it's just a beautiful game with a low entry point that almost anyone can play, no matter who you are. I think you'll find some solace in the island of Tsushima. And looks like we finally reached the end of the video. Thank you guys for watching this far. Did any of your favorite games show up in this list? Did any of the games that you want to play show up in this list? Is there anything from this list that kind of has you intrigued that you want to play because I've brought light to it, like maybe Katana Zero? Let me know in the comments below. And my socials are in my bio as usual. What did I call it? My bio in the description. First video of the year is out and I'm glad. I'm hoping to make more content for you guys this year, and Happy New Year!